All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Thomas Halachek, and I decided to do my final project on hydrogen vehicle technology. In this presentation, we will cover the technology that's integrated into hydrogen vehicles, how hydrogen is electrolyzed for power, its applications, and how the fuel mileage can be increased and what components need to be improved upon to increase this gas mileage. Now, the thoughts and concepts of utilizing hydrogen for harnessing power have been around for quite some time, and I have some quotes here that reinforce that. In the 1920s, German engineer Rudolf Ahern converted the internal combustion engines of trucks, buses, and submarines to use hydrogen or hydrogen mixtures. And in 1958, the United States formed the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, which everyone knows as NASA. A NASA space program currently uses the most liquid hydrogen worldwide, primarily for rocket propulsion and as a fuel for fuel cells. And these quotes came from the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. The next thing we're going to talk about is the power harnessing process and how we get power from hydrogen. And Mr. English already kind of covered this in class, but simply we just use pure hydrogen and react it with an electrolyte. Now, depending on the application and fuel cell stack, we'll be using different electrolytes, and the process is slightly different. But I mean, it basically follows that idea where hydrogen is reacted with an electrolyte and water is the byproduct. And there are a couple of different electrolyte fuel cells out there, and I have the most popular ones listed here. The most popular ones are alkali, molten carbonate, phosphoric acid, proton exchange membrane, and solid oxide. Now, I'd like to talk about all these at length. However, unfortunately, I don't have enough time to do that, so the ones that you see with the stars next to it are the ones I'm going to go over in detail. The first one we're going to talk about are alkali fuel cells, and these utilize a compressed hydrogen and oxygen for power, and it uses potassium hydroxide as the electrolyte. It's 70% efficient, which is pretty substantial, although the operating temperature is 300 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is kind of high. And interestingly enough, NASA actually uses fuel cell in its Apollo missions, and they used it so that the fuel cells could provide the electricity for the shuttle. Meanwhile, the byproduct, being water, actually provided the drinking water for the astronauts. So I found that to be pretty interesting. Here I have a picture that shows how it all works. The next one we're going to talk about are the molten carbonate fuel cells, and these use a high temperature salt carbonate as the electrolyte. Now it's 60 to 80% efficient, although the operating temperature is 650 degrees Fahrenheit. The output is 2 megawatts, and there's even models out today that have produced 100 megawatts, although this high output is a double-edged sword because, despite being able to get so much power out of these things, they have such a high operating temperature, it makes them very unusable. Imagine if you try using this in a car and a car gets into an accident. I mean, that's a fire waiting to happen. Although, on the flip side, this heat can actually be used and recycled to make electricity. So, if there's some way we can further transform or rework this fuel cell, then that could definitely be something substantial to use. Here I have a picture that shows how it all works. The last one we're going to talk about, and it's the most popular, is a proton exchange membrane, and it uses a water-based acidic polymer membrane as the electrolyte. However, the only downside is it needs to use pure hydrogen as its main fuel. It's 40 to 50% efficient. Its operating temperature is 175 degrees Fahrenheit. Its output is 50 to 250 kilowatts. And as I said, this is the number one choice for car applications and home applications. Every hydrogen vehicle that's out there today uses this exact kind of fuel cell in one way, shape, or form. Here I have a picture that shows it, how it all works. The next thing we're going to talk about is a plausible option for maximizing mileage in hydrogen vehicles. Now, everyone talks about with hydrogen vehicles and electric vehicles, oh, it should be one versus the other, where that's not really the case. If there were a way to have a hydrogen vehicle be a hybrid vehicle where it also uses an electric powertrain, then the fuel mileage we could obtain out of that would be substantially larger than anything we have today. And we'd use that in the same way that a Prius works, where the hydrogen drivetrain would cover all the heavy loads and heavy acceleration. Meanwhile, when we're at highway speeds, the electric drivetrain would take over and cover that. And it would complement each other too, because the hydrogen side would create electricity, which would charge the electrical side, and with utilizing current technology today with regenerative braking, then the electric side can just keep recharging itself. And like I said, this would be a pretty self-sufficient vehicle and a pretty plausible option. So I mean, like I said, when everyone says, "Oh, it should be one versus the other," no, it's actually, if you use it in conjunction with each other, it would definitely be a worthwhile option. Next thing we're going to talk about are the components that go into our hydrogen system. The major thing that inhibits hydrogen vehicle fuel mileage are its tank sizes, and all these tanks are pretty strong. They undergo rigorous testing, they can withstand extreme impacts and pressures, and they're certified, and they're made out of aluminum, steel, fiberglass, or carbon fiber. However, if there's a way that we could figure out a tank to be stronger and pack in more pressure, then we could easily increase the fuel mileage of these vehicles. Another thing to consider is if the components like the lines were made out of different materials that are still compatible, strong, and light, then it would definitely reduce the cost of the vehicle and make it more affordable for everyday consumers. Next thing we're going to talk about is the use of hydrogen vehicles with fleet vehicles. And companies like UPS and FedEx are aggressively using these alternative fuel vehicles for their fleets. And interestingly enough, too, they have actually created hydrogen fuel cell semi-trucks. And I mean, if we all use these vehicles for the fleets, you know, with these vehicles running all day, it would definitely make a huge impact in cutting down the emissions and definitely helping out the environment. Now, the government offers a $40,000 tax break to the hydrogen powered semi-truck owners, which, you know, that's pretty substantial, and that's a pretty hefty incentive, which isn't, there aren't any nearly any other incentives like that for other hydrogen vehicles. And ultimately, hydrogen fuel is cheaper than diesel, and these would help companies, you know, with their profits, and they'd make more money with utilizing hydrogen instead of regular fuel. The last major thing that is the last, you know, is like the last hurdle to get over for using hydrogen for everyday cars is the refueling infrastructure. There aren't enough refueling stations out there, and granted, there's a couple in California, a couple in, I know, in Illinois, and a couple near Detroit. If someone wanted to take a trip from California all the way to the East Coast, that wouldn't be possible. Nonetheless, if everyone started buying hydrogen vehicles, then there aren't enough stations out there to support that need. Um, Now, they say that we could already use present gas stations as a basis for hydrogen pumps. However, for them to be fitted with hydrogen pumps is you know, a pretty costly endeavor, because those cost anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, and it would take you quite a while for those pumps to start paying you back, unless the popularity of hydrogen vehicles significantly takes off, which most likely wouldn't happen. In conclusion, hydrogen fuel is cheaper than regular unleaded gasoline. It emits next to zero emissions, and it's a very plausible alternative. It can easily replace regular gasoline. However, first we need to improve all the systems and infrastructures that I previously talked about. And once we can do that, it would definitely revolutionize the automotive industry. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much for watching.